to the political analyst Mohamad Elmasry, who joins us from Minneapolis in Minnesota. Mohamad, thank you very much indeed. What's the situation like under President Sisi compared to other former military generals who took power and then gave up their uniforms, which is what Sisi has done? Compare Sisi not with Morsi, if you don't mind, but with, say, Anwar Sadat, with Hosni Mubarak.
Well, I think all of the human rights organizations and also all of the political scientists, at least those I follow, are pretty much in consensus that this is the worst period in Egypt's modern history for human rights. The Sisi administration, the Sisi regime, has committed unprecedented violations. They've presided over mass killings of unarmed protesters in the streets, somewhere between 1,000 and 3,000 protesters killed. They've arrested about 60,000 people on political charges, so there are about 60,000 political prisoners in Egypt. They've used forced disappearance and torture as tools of repression. Torture is rampant, including rape in the Egyptian prisons. All of this has been documented in pretty meticulous detail by Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, Human Rights Monitor, and in your lead-up, you spoke to some of it. So the situation has gotten significantly worse. What I tell people is that Egyptians took a step forward with the 2011 uprising against Mubarak, and then now they've taken a couple of steps backwards.
How is he able to get away with it?
Well, because he's done a really good job of consolidating power. He controls the military, he controls the police, he controls the media apparatus. I mean, this is a full-on military dictatorship. There is no space for political opposition or dissent of any kind. Political parties were banned, the serious opposition parties, media outlets were shut down, political leaders were arrested. Draconian legislation was introduced to prevent protests and prevent even disagreements in the media with the government. So there's no space to maneuver. Anyone who has dared to challenge Sisi, even weakly, has been shut down. So for instance, in last year's presidential election, a couple of people stepped forward to run against him, and they would have been weak candidates, right? Ahmed Shafiq, Samia Anan, and a couple of others. Two of those people were arrested, a couple of others were intimidated to drop out of the race, and only one opponent was allowed to stay in, and he himself was a Sisi supporter. So there is no room, there is no space to challenge Sisi at the moment.
Is the cult of personality that he has built up in Egypt completely fake?
Well, I think that's an interesting question. I think one of the things that has been projected by Egyptian media, and even to a lesser extent by Western media, is that Sisi is very popular in Egypt, that people are making cakes and chocolate bars and statues in his image, and that he's loved by the overwhelming majority of Egyptians. The reality on the ground is quite different, however. In your lead-up, you spoke to the economic difficulties of the majority of Egyptians. About 60% of Egyptians live in poverty. About 10 million Egyptian children live in poverty. Things have gotten much worse for the average Egyptian under Sisi. In terms of his popularity, we have to remember there were only 2 scientific opinion polls done on Sisi after the coup. Both of them showed that his popularity was only about 50%, right around the same as Mohammed Morsi, the man he deposed. Those polls were done about 5 years ago. Those organizations have been prevented from coming back to Egypt because the results were so damning and so embarrassing for President Sisi. If there was an opinion poll done now, I don't think, I'm just speculating, but I find it hard to believe that his popularity would be anything beyond about 30%.
Mohamad, really interesting. Thank you very much indeed. Mohamad Elmasry joining us from Minnesota.